The accident that changed everything. The first time Mara Chen saw him, he was standing in the middle of Route 66 at 3 in the morning, and she was about to kill him. Her hands jerked the wheel. Tires screamed. The world spun in a kaleidoscope of headlights and desert darkness. Her rental car kissed the guardrail with a metallic shriek before stuttering to a stop on the shoulder, steam hissing from under the hood like a dying breath. Mara's heart hammered against her ribs. She looked back at the empty highway, lit orange by a single flickering streetlight. No body. No blood. No man. I saw him, she whispered to no one. I saw him. She'd been driving for 16 hours straight from Seattle to Phoenix, running from a wedding that wasn't hers, from a man she'd loved for 7 years who chose someone else. Her phone sat in a rest stop bathroom 200 miles back. She wanted to disappear, and the desert seemed like the perfect place to do it. But the man in the road, he'd been so clear. Dark hair, sharp jawline, eyes that caught her headlights like an animal's, and a leather jacket despite the 70-degree night. Mara stepped out of the car on shaking legs. The desert stretched endlessly in all directions, silent except for the wind. She was alone. Hello? Her voice cracked. Are you hurt? Nothing. She checked under the car, even though she knew it was crazy. No one. She hadn't hit him. She couldn't have. She'd swerved in time. But where had he gone? You're exhausted, she told herself. Hallucinating. Get it together. The car wouldn't start. Of course it wouldn't. Mara laughed, a brittle sound that the desert swallowed whole. No phone. No help. Just her and the infinite darkness and a ghost that shouldn't exist. She was still laughing when he appeared beside her window. Mara screamed. Actually screamed, her body jerking so hard she slammed her elbow against the door. The man held up his hands, eyes wide. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. She grabbed the tire iron from the back seat, pointing it at him through the glass. Stay back? Okay, okay. He stepped away, hands still raised. I'm not going to hurt you. I promise. You were in the middle of the road. I could have killed you. I know. I'm sorry. I didn't think anyone would be driving through here so late. He had an accent she couldn't place, something European mixed with American, like he'd lived everywhere and nowhere. What are you doing out here? Mara's hand shook as she gripped the tire iron. I could ask you the same thing. He smiled, and it transformed his face completely. But I'm guessing we both have our reasons for being in the middle of nowhere at 3 a.m. She studied him through the window. He looked about her age, early 30s, handsome in a way that seemed almost old-fashioned, like he'd stepped out of a film noir. And there was something else, something she couldn't name, a sadness in his eyes that mirrored her own. My car died, she finally said. I know. I heard it. He tilted his head. I'm pretty good with engines. Want me to take a look? Every instinct screamed no. Don't trust strangers in the desert. Don't trust men who appear out of nowhere. Don't trust anything tonight. But what choice did she have? Fine, she said, not lowering the tire iron. But I'm watching you. He grinned. I wouldn't expect anything less. The man with no shadow. His name was Silas, and he fixed her car in 20 minutes. Loose battery cable, he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. Probably came loose when you hit the brakes. You're lucky. Could have been a lot worse. Mara watched him work, still gripping the tire iron, though it felt more ridiculous by the minute. He moved with an easy confidence, humming something under his breath. She found herself relaxing despite everything. Thank you, she said when the engine purred to life. No problem. He stepped back, and that's when she noticed it. The streetlight cast her shadow long across the asphalt. But Silas had none. Mara blinked, looked again. No shadow. Not even a hint of one. Something wrong? He asked. There's no. She couldn't finish the sentence. It was crazy. Everyone had a shadow. Silas followed her gaze to the ground and laughed. But it sounded hollow. Oh, that. What do you mean, oh that? Mara's voice pitched higher. Where's your shadow? He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the empty pavement where his shadow should be. When he looked up, something had shifted in his expression. A resignation. Like he'd been caught in a lie he was tired of telling. What if I told you I lost it? He said softly. That's not possible. A lot of impossible things are possible. He shoved his hands in his pockets. You believe in ghosts, Mara? How do you know my name? Your license is on the dashboard. I saw it when I was fixing the car. He nodded toward the windshield. So, do you? She wanted to say no. She wanted to be rational, practical, the kind of person who believed in science and logic and things that made sense. But she was standing in the middle of the desert at 3 a.m. talking to a man with no shadow, and rationality seemed to have left the building. "Are you a ghost?" she whispered. "Not exactly." Silas ran a hand through his hair. "I'm what happens when you give up everything for someone who doesn't love you back. I'm what's left when you trade your soul for one more day with a person who's already gone." Mara's blood went cold. "What are you talking about? 3 years ago, I made a deal," he said. "The woman I loved died in a car accident. Right here, actually. This exact spot." He gestured to the highway. "And I couldn't accept it. So when something offered to bring her back for one more year, I said yes." "Something?" "You don't ask questions when you're desperate. You just say yes." His eyes were distant now, lost in memory. "The price was my shadow. My reflection. My ability to be photographed. All the ways the world proves you exist, I gave them up. Because a year with her seemed worth it." Mara asked, even though she knew the answer would break her heart. "And after that year, she left me anyway." Silas smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Turns out bringing someone back from the dead doesn't make them love you. It just makes them resent you for trapping them in a world they'd already said goodbye to." The wind picked up, carrying sand across the highway in ghostly spirals. Mara's mind raced. This was insane. Impossible. But she'd seen his missing shadow with her own eyes. "Why are you still here?" she asked. "In this spot?" "Because I can't leave." The deal wasn't just about her, it was about me too. I gave up my existence in the normal world. Now I'm stuck between places, waiting. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she felt something crack open inside her chest. "That's why I was in the road tonight. I wanted to see if I could still die. If someone hit me, would it finally end?" "Oh my God." Mara's hand flew to her mouth. "But you swerved." He said it almost like an accusation. "Why did you swerve?" "Because you're a person." "Because I'm not a murderer. I'm not a person anymore." "Not really." Silas walked toward her, and this close she could see the impossible details, how the starlight passed through him just slightly, how he didn't quite disturb the dust when he moved. "I'm a warning. A cautionary tale. Don't love someone so much you lose yourself." Mara thought about David. About 7 years of shaping herself into whatever he needed, changing her career path when he moved cities, giving up friendships he didn't approve of. About how she'd received the wedding invitation 3 days ago, his wedding to someone he'd known for 6 months, and realized she'd spent nearly a decade loving someone who'd never really seen her at all. "Too late," she whispered. Silas studied her face. The woman running from something in the middle of the night. "Let me guess, bad breakup? He's marrying someone else in 2 days. And you still love him." "I don't know what I feel anymore." Mara sank against the car, suddenly exhausted. "I just know I can't go back to who I was. That person is dead." "Then maybe we're both ghosts," Silas said gently. They stood there in the strange liminal space between night and morning, two broken people who'd given up too much for love that was never really theirs. And something shifted in the air between them, recognition, maybe, or just the comfort of being seen by someone who understood. "I don't want to be alone right now," Mara heard herself say. "Do you? Could you just sit with me for a while?" Silas smiled, and this time it was real. "I've got nothing but time." 3 days in the desert. They talked until the sun came up, painting the desert in shades of amber and rose gold. Mara told him about David, about how she'd met him in college and thought he was her soulmate, how she'd followed him from Seattle to Boston to Los Angeles, always believing the next city would be where they finally built a life together, how he'd always had excuses, career timing, family pressure, wanting to be more financially stable. She'd waited and waited, making herself smaller and smaller, until one day she looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Silas told her about Elena, about how they'd met in Barcelona and fallen in love in that quick, desperate way of people who know their time is limited. She was a photographer traveling the world before starting graduate school. He was a musician running from family expectations. They'd had 3 perfect months before she decided to drive Route 66 as her final American adventure. The drunk driver who hit her never even stopped. "I couldn't accept it," Silas said, watching the sunrise with eyes that looked far older than his face. "Everyone kept saying time heals all wounds, but I didn't want to heal. I wanted her back. And then one night, standing right here where she died, something spoke to me. It had different names: Crossroads Demon, Desert Spirit, It didn't matter. It said it could give me one more year with her. How did it bring her back? Mara asked. I never found out. She just appeared one morning in my apartment, confused but alive. She didn't remember dying, didn't remember anything after leaving Barcelona. And for a while, it was perfect. We had our second chance. His voice cracked. But you can't cheat death without consequences. She started noticing things, how I had no reflection, how photographs showed empty space where I stood. And I couldn't explain it without telling her the truth. That she'd died. That I'd made a deal to bring her back. That our time was limited. What did she do when you told her? She left. Silas laughed bitterly. Said I'd stolen her death from her, her chance to rest. That bringing her back wasn't about her. It was about me. My inability to let go. And she was right. I'd been so focused on what I'd lost that I never thought about what she might want. The sun was fully up now, harsh and unforgiving. Mara shielded her eyes and saw how Silas seemed to fade slightly in the direct light, becoming more translucent. You're disappearing, she said. I'm always more solid at night. Daylight isn't really for people like me anymore. He stood. You should go. Get back on the road. Phoenix is only 2 hours away. You can make it before the heat gets bad. What about you? I'll be here. I'm always here. He said it matter-of-factly, like discussing the weather. Something in Mara rebelled at that. No, I'm not leaving you alone in the desert. You helped me. Let me help you. Mara, there's no helping me. The deal I made. Tell me exactly what the deal was, she interrupted. Word for word. Silas frowned. I traded my existence in the living world for one more year with Elena. My shadow, reflection, and image, all proof that I exist, became forfeit. And when the year ended, I'd be bound to the place where she died, unable to leave until... He trailed off. Until what? It never said. That was the problem. I didn't read the fine print. He smiled wryly. Never make a deal when you're grieving. Mara's mind raced. She'd been a lawyer before David convinced her to switch to non-profit work because it was more meaningful. She knew contracts, loopholes, the power of words. It said you'd be bound here until something happened. There has to be an escape clause. These things always have conditions. You sound like you know about crossroads deals. I know about contracts. And every contract can be broken if you find the right leverage. She pulled out her dead phone, swore, then grabbed a pen from her car. Tell me everything. Every word of the deal. Everything that happened after. Every rule you've discovered about your condition. Why are you doing this? Silas asked quietly. Mara met his eyes. Those strange, sad eyes that seemed to reflect her own pain. Because maybe saving you is how I save myself. They spent the day in the shade of an outcropping, Mara taking notes while Silas recounted every detail. She learned that he couldn't travel more than 100 yards from the spot where Elena died. That he could interact with the physical world, fix cars, touch things, but he cast no shadow, appeared in no photographs, and most people's eyes slid right past him unless he made an effort to be seen. It's like I'm a glitch in reality, he explained. Most people's brains just edit me out. But you see me clearly. Maybe because I'm halfway to being a ghost myself, Mara said. She'd been thinking about David's wedding, happening tomorrow, about how she'd essentially erased herself over 7 years to fit into his life. Maybe that's why she could see Silas, because they were both people who'd given up their existence for love. As the sun set on their first full day together, painting the desert in violent purples and reds, Mara had an idea. The deal said you'd be bound here until some condition was met, right? What if the condition is that you have to help someone the way you wish you'd been helped? Silas looked skeptical. What do you mean? You said the demon offered you a deal when you were grieving, desperate, not thinking clearly. What if the way out is to save someone else from making the same mistake? To help them let go before they trap themselves like you did? That's a nice theory. But nothing. I'm going to that wedding tomorrow, Mara said suddenly. David's wedding. And you're going to help me. I can't leave this spot. Then I'll come back. After the wedding, I'll come back here, and we'll figure this out together. She grabbed his hand. It was solid, warm, real. I'm not leaving you here to fade away. You made a mistake out of love. That doesn't mean you deserve to be punished forever. Silas stared at their joined hands. Why do you care so much? You barely know me. Because, Mara said softly, you're the first person in 7 years who's seen me as someone worth saving. Let me return the favor. Mara drove through the night, arriving in Phoenix with an hour to spare before David's wedding. She'd called her best friend Ava from a gas station, explaining everything, the almost accident, the man with no shadow, the crossroads deal. "So you met a hot ghost and now you're in love with him instead," Ava summarized. "Honestly? Upgrade." "I'm not in love with him," Mara protested. I can't explain it. I feel like I'm supposed to help him." "Maybe you are. Or maybe you're finally learning to help yourself." Ava's voice softened. "Mara, you spent 7 years waiting for David to choose you? This is the first time I've heard you choose something for yourself." The wedding was at a boutique hotel, all desert chic and string lights. Mara arrived in the same clothes she'd been wearing for 2 days, dust in her hair, looking like exactly what she was, a woman who'd driven through the night running from and towards something she couldn't name. She found David in the courtyard, greeting guests. He looked good. He always looked good. That's what had drawn her in initially, that polished perfection. Now she saw it for what it was, a carefully curated image with nothing underneath. "Mara?" His face went pale. "What are you doing here?" "I came to see you get married." She was surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "Isn't that what you wanted when you sent me an invitation?" We thought it would be closure. That you'd move on." Mara laughed. "You mean you and your bride? You discussed me?" David glanced around, checking if anyone was watching. "Always worried about appearances. This isn't the time or place." "You're right. It's not." Mara stepped closer. "I'm not here to stop the wedding or make a scene. I'm here to say goodbye. To the person I was when I loved you. To the 7 years I gave you. To the idea that if I just waited long enough, you'd finally see me. Mara, I was so afraid of losing you that I lost myself instead. I gave up my career, my friends, my own dreams, trying to be whatever you needed. And you know what? You still chose someone else. Someone you barely knew. Because the problem was never timing or circumstances. You just didn't love me. And that's okay." David's eyes widened. "That's not. It is. And I'm finally okay with it." Mara felt something break loose in her chest, something that had been wedged there for years. "I spent so long thinking I wasn't enough. But I was. I am. You just couldn't see it. And that's your loss, not mine." She turned to walk away, and David grabbed her arm. "Wait. I did love you. I do love you. It's just complicated? Never the right time? You needed to focus on your career?" Mara gently removed his hand. "I know all the excuses, David. I heard them for 7 years. But love isn't supposed to be convenient. It's supposed to be a choice you make every day. And you never chose me." "Not really." She walked away without looking back. It should have hurt more, this final severing. Instead, she felt light, untethered, free. As she reached her car, her phone buzzed. She'd charged it at Ava's house. One new message from an unknown number. "Come back. Something's happening. S." Mara's heart lurched. She drove like a demon was chasing her. Appropriate, given the circumstances. She found Silas where she'd left him, but everything was different. He was standing in the middle of the highway, solid as stone, and his shadow stretched long and dark across the asphalt. "Oh my God," Mara breathed. "Your shadow. It came back." Silas stared at it like he'd seen a miracle. "About an hour ago, I started feeling different. More real. More here. And then I looked down and..." His voice broke. "I have a shadow again." "The deal," Mara said. "We broke it. Somehow we broke it. But how? What did we..." Silas stopped. "What you said. At the wedding. About choosing yourself. About not losing yourself for love. I don't understand. The condition." Silas grabbed her hands. "The condition for my freedom. It wasn't about helping someone else avoid a deal. It was about learning the lesson myself. About choosing to exist again, to be seen, to stop punishing myself for loving wrong." "But you didn't do anything differently," Mara protested. "I did. I let you see me. Really see me. Not as a cautionary tale or a tragic figure, but as a person worth saving, worth helping, worth existing in the world again." Silas's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You saw me, Mara, and that reminded me how to see myself. So the deal is broken? You're free?" "I think so. I feel different. More solid. Like I'm fully back in the world." He laughed, a sound of pure joy. "I can leave this place. I can go anywhere. I can exist again." They stood there in the middle of the highway, holding hands, two people who'd been lost and found themselves in the strangest way possible. The sun was setting again, painting everything gold. And for the first time in 3 years, Silas cast a long, perfect shadow. What will you do now? Mara asked. I don't know. Live, I guess. Really live this time, not just exist. He squeezed her hands. What about you? Same? Figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be someone else's idea of perfect. You're already perfect, Silas said softly. No, I'm not. But I'm finally okay with that. They smiled at each other, and something passed between them. Understanding, recognition, possibility. Can I buy you breakfast? Silas asked. I haven't eaten in 3 years. I'm starving. I know a place, Mara said. They drove to a diner 50 miles down the highway, Mara at the wheel and Silas in the passenger seat, marveling at how the world looked different when you were really, truly alive in it. Over pancakes and terrible coffee, they talked about the future. Silas wanted to go back to Barcelona, reconnect with his music. Mara wanted to go to Seattle, reclaim her old apartment, maybe go back to law school. They exchanged numbers, promised to stay in touch, made plans to visit each other. It felt like an ending. A good one, but an ending nonetheless. Thank you, Silas said as they walked back to Mara's car, for seeing me, for believing I could be free. Thank you for helping me remember who I am, Mara replied. They hugged goodbye, and it should have been simple, sweet, a perfect conclusion to their strange, brief connection. But when Silas pulled back, Mara saw something that made her blood run cold. Her shadow. It was gone. She looked down at the bright pavement, at Silas's perfectly normal shadow stretching beside her feet. But where her shadow should be, there was nothing. What? She spun around, checking different angles. No shadow. No, no, no. Mara? Silas's voice was sharp with concern. My shadow? It's gone. Her breath came in short gasps. How is it gone? Silas grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. What exactly did you say when you left the wedding? I don't. I just told David the first was choosing myself, that I was done losing myself for love. She stopped. Oh God. You made a deal, Silas whispered. No, I didn't. I never spoke to anything, never agreed to. You don't have to speak to something for it to hear you. The crossroads, the desert, whatever power is here, it listens. And when you're in a place of grief or desperation, sometimes it hears what you need even if you don't say it out loud. Mara thought back to that moment at the wedding, the breaking feeling in her chest. She'd been so focused on letting David go, on reclaiming herself, that she hadn't noticed the strange warmth that spread through her body as she walked away, the sense that something fundamental had shifted. What did I trade? She asked, dreading the answer. Silas took her hand, and his expression was devastated. I think you traded your existence for mine. The deal didn't break. It transferred. Someone always has to pay the price. But I didn't mean to. I didn't know. Desperation doesn't care about intention. Silas's voice cracked. Mara, I'm so sorry. This is my fault. I should have warned you. Should have told you not to come back. Stop. Mara forced herself to breathe. We'll figure this out. The same way we figured out your deal. There has to be a way to break this. It took me 3 years. Then we'll spend 3 years. Or 30. However long it takes. She squeezed his hand. You said it yourself. Someone saw you, really saw you, and that's what set you free. So you'll see me, and we'll find the lesson I'm supposed to learn. Silas pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. I'll stay with you. Every day. Until you're free. You don't have to. I want to. You saved me. Let me save you back. They stood there on the side of the highway as the sun set, the shadowless woman and the man who'd reclaimed his existence, and Mara realized something that made her laugh despite everything. What? Silas asked. I spent 7 years disappearing for David, making myself smaller, less visible, until I barely existed at all. She looked at the empty space where her shadow should be. Maybe I needed to literally lose my existence to understand how much I'd already given away. That's very philosophical for someone who just lost their shadow. I learned from the best. Mara smiled at him, and it was real. Come on. If I'm stuck here, we might as well make the most of it. Teach me how to exist between worlds. Are you sure? Most people would be terrified. I am terrified. But I'm also excited? Is that weird? She looked around at the desert, vast and star-filled and full of impossible things. For the first time in years, I don't know what happens next. I'm not following someone else's plan or waiting for someone to choose me. This is just mine. My weird, shadowless adventure. Silas laughed, and it sounded like hope. You're amazing. You know that? I'm starting to believe it. They spent that night sitting by the highway, Mara learning how to exist as a ghost, how to make herself seen when she wanted to be noticed, how to move through the world without disturbing it. Silas taught her everything he'd learned in 3 years, and with every lesson, something shifted between them. It wasn't love, not yet. It was something deeper, recognition. Two people who'd lost themselves and found each other in the loss. Two people learning how to exist again, together. As dawn broke over the desert, Mara felt her body start to fade with the light, becoming translucent in the harsh morning sun. But Silas was there, solid and real beside her, anchoring her to the world. I've got you, he promised. I'm not going anywhere. I know, Mara said. And she did. Because sometimes the greatest love story isn't about finding someone who completes you. It's about finding someone who helps you remember you were always whole to begin with. Someone who sees you when the world forgets you exist. Someone who stays. And in the strange liminal space between life and death, between shadow and substance, between who she'd been and who she was becoming, Mara finally felt like herself again. Even if that self no longer cast a shadow. 1 year later. The diner was crowded with late-night truckers and insomniacs when Mara walked in, Silas right behind her. She'd learned to make herself visible now, to pull reality around her like a coat. It was easier with him beside her, his solid presence somehow making her more real. They ordered coffee and pie, their ritual after a long night of existing between worlds. They'd traveled the country together over the past year, two ghosts learning how to live again. Silas had started writing music, haunting melodies that seemed to come from somewhere beyond the normal world. Mara had started helping people, other lost souls who'd made deals or were about to, guiding them away from the same mistakes she and Silas had made. I think I figured it out, Mara said suddenly. My condition. The way to break the deal. Silas looked up from his pie. Yeah? It's not about learning to be selfish or learning to be selfless. It's about learning to exist for yourself while still connecting with others. To be whole on your own but choose to share that wholeness. She met his eyes. I gave up my existence for yours because I thought saving you would save me. But that's just another version of what I did with David, losing myself for someone else. So what's the answer? Silas asked quietly. The answer is that I don't need to be saved. I need to save myself. To choose myself every day. Not as a reaction to someone else, but as an active decision. She smiled. And I need to stop waiting for some external thing to make me whole again. My shadow, your love, anyone's validation. I need to be complete as I am, shadowless and strange and halfway between worlds. As she said the words, something shifted. The air seemed to shimmer, and Mara looked down to see a shadow pooling beneath her feet, faint at first, then growing stronger, darker, until it matched Silas's perfectly. Oh, she breathed. You did it. Silas's voice was full of wonder. You broke the deal. We did it, Mara corrected. She stood, testing her newly solid existence. Everything felt different, more real, more present, more here. We did it together. So what now? Silas asked. Mara looked at him, this man who'd been a stranger in the road and became her companion in the strange journey back to herself. She thought about David's wedding, about how she'd felt nothing but relief. She thought about the past year, learning how to exist again, and how every moment had been better with Silas beside her. Now, she held out her hand. Now we figure out what it means to be alive. Really, truly alive. Together if you want, separate if you don't. But this time, we do it as whole people who choose each other, not as broken people trying to fix each other. Silas took her hand, and his smile was everything she never knew she needed. Together sounds good. They walked out of the diner into the desert night, two people who'd been ghosts and learned to be human again. Their shadows stretched long behind them in the starlight, perfectly matched, perfectly real. And somewhere in the distance, the desert whispered its approval. Another deal broken, another lesson learned, another pair of souls finding their way back to the land of the living through the strange alchemy of loss and love, and learning to exist for themselves. Mara never went back to David. She never needed to. She built a life that was entirely her own, sometimes with Silas, sometimes alone, but always as herself. Completely, unapologetically herself. And that, she realized, was the greatest love story of all.